Hi guys, welcome back. So today's video we are going to talk about compliance and substantive testing. So now the first question that I would like to ask you guys, for you guys to think about it, what is compliance testing? As I mentioned to you guys before, compliance testing simply means that whether the employees with the organizations follow the policies and procedures from the senior management or laws and regulation from the regulators, right? Now, let me tell you guys a simple example. When it comes to the IT compliance, so we have a regulation probably from the senior management that you need to change your password once in every 3 months time, for example. So in this case, when the compliance officer comes in, the compliance officer would look at and see whether the organizations do follow these policies and procedures. If everybody follows and all of your employees change their password once in every 3 months time, that means your employees follow the regulations. That means the compliance testing is going to be passed. Okay, so that is how we look at it. So now let's look at one more example of a classical example where we look at it and then we come up with sometimes new regulations, new policies and procedures, because whenever bad incident happens, no matter where it is, we learn lesson from that. And then we don't want this kind of bad things happens in the future. So we comes up, the management comes up with regulations, as well as regulators comes up with new regulation. Okay, so management comes with policies and procedures, and regulators comes with the regulations, right? So now let's simply look at here. If you look at your bank account and bank balance, you would see that your bank balance comes to end with up only 2 digits, right? So 2 digits in the means decimal, $123.45, only up to 2. The bank calculates your balance every day, right? And then, but of course, your actual balance is going to be a little bit more than 2 decimal digits, could be 6, 7, 8, 9 added to 0.45, right? So now banks calculate the balance of your account balance every day, and then there is some little amount for you. Even if you don't get it, it's not a big deal. But think about this: bank has thousands of customers. They calculate the balance every day. Think about 1 year. If you add those small digits, it could be a substantial amount. So who get that money? What do you think? Who get that money? That money usually get by the bank, right? But in this classical example, something happened some years ago. There was a programmer in the bank, write his own program. He changed the lines of code in the bank's system, and then he write a code, and then he managed to get those whatever digits not to the bank but to his account. Nobody knew about it for many years. Eventually the compliance officers came and checked it out and found that definitely this guy was doing something like this. Okay, so this kind of thing should not happen in the future, right? So in this case, what we need to do is to come up with new regulations. In other words, new controls, right? New controls to reduce the risk of this kind of things happens. Can you guys think about control? Any control that we can have to reduce the risk of this kind of things happens in the future in other banks, right? So the simple control could be, we have a change management. How it happens? Because the programmers could change the line of codes by himself without any approval from their supervisors. So now here important that we need to have a change management. That means the change management policies and procedures were not there in that particular bank. Okay, so we are talking about policies and procedures. That policies and procedures were not there in that bank, right? So that's why that he could change it. So it's important to have a change management in place. So now what we do is, when you do the compliance testing, possibly now current banks has, most of the banks definitely should have what we call a change management procedure. That means programmers or whoever that developers within the bank will never be able to access directly to your bank's software, bank's line of codes, bank systems. So we have to get the approval before we let them to access it. So now when you look at compliance testing, when the compliance officers comes and go to the bank, and when the compliance officers look at the bank and see whether how many, say for example, last 1 month, last 6 months, how many changes has been done to the organization, right? And then see how many were given approval, right? If it's given approval, so it's difficult to check all of them. The way to check is, what we do is we take a sample, say for example 200, 300 changes has been taken place, or maybe even thousands. So we can't check all of them, we take a sample, right? So what we do is we take a sample, and what we do is we look at we take a sample and then check whether those changes has been given approval, right? But then we found that the change 104 was not given approval, because if you have a good controls, we may have in audit trails as well. So by referring to audit trail, we can easily find it out. Okay, now it's failed. What does it mean now? Are you going to worry about change 104? Yes, that is something happens without approval. So we are worrying about maybe the programmer has done something for his personal benefit. In that case, what we need to, we're going to dig deeper. We want to do the detailed analysis. So what we need to do, what exactly happened in 104, detailed analysis. That's what we call substantive testing. So let me repeat again. Compliance testing means we test whether the employees follow the policies and procedures. Okay, when we do so, we found there is a one change, because we look at whether that all of them followed the policies and procedures. That means change management, all the change has to be given approval. But we found change 104 is not given approval. So that means we are worrying about it. We do the detailed analysis. We call substantive testing. So substantive testing means detailed analysis and see the line of codes. Then we found, yes, that's a code number 3 is something supposed not to be there. It's for the personal benefit, right? So compliance testing fail means we do the substantive testing. If compliance testing pass, we may not need to do substantive testing much, because the substantive testing takes a very long time. And of course, when we go compliance in an organization, we have a limited time, so that we are not going to spend too much time for that. Okay, right? So the rule of thumb is this: compliance testing pass, we don't have to do too much substantive testing. That's easy. That's normal situation, right? So compliance testing pass, we don't have it. But think about the situation where compliance officer goes to a bank and found that bank does not have a change management procedure. That bank says that programmer should do due diligence or whatever that their own judgment to do the change. So its policies and procedures come from senior management is this: the programmer has to do the due diligence, and it seems every programmer says that we do the same thing. So what happened? Compliance testing pass. But still, are you worrying about it? Because there should be a policy of change management. That policy is not there, but still, since it's not there, compliance testing pass. That means that's a weakness of internal controls. Control of change management must have been there, but it's not there. In this case, are we worrying about the changes happen during the past 6 months, 1 year? Yes, definitely. So what we're going to do, even though in this case the compliance testing pass, we might still need to do the substantive testing. That's very important here. Okay, so we do substantive testing in 2 different situations. One is employees, organizations do not follow policies and procedures or regulations. That's one thing. Second thing is this: we don't have enough controls. That means controls are weaker, or we don't have controls at all. In that case also, we do the substantive testing. Okay, right.